I know I'm a little late to this one, but I was working on it for a bit, and you can say that this was a few months in the making. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. I still haven't talked about Peacemaker yet. The first season ended some time ago, and I've been wanting to talk about it, so today we're going to stop and fix that. So, before we begin, let me know in the comments what your thoughts on the show were, if you already saw it, or if you were planning on seeing it, and make sure to hit that thumbs up button if you like these reviews, as it helps me out immensely by getting my content out there. And if you're new here, I hope you consider hitting that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with more movie and TV related content like DC and Marvel reviews on a near daily basis. But, let's not waste any more time and let's talk about Peacemaker Season 1. This picks up where the Suicide Squad left off, where Peacemaker, played again by John Cena, returns home after recovering from his encounter with Bloodsport, only to discover his freedom comes at a price. So, similar to what I do with my reviews of other TV shows, this is going to talk about the season as a whole, meaning this will get into spoiler territory. So, if you haven't seen Peacemaker yet, and you wish to know nothing, this is your spoiler warning. Go watch the show, then come back to this. But, now that you've been warned, here we go. Created by James Gunn, who wrote every episode and directed all but 3 of them, this is the first TV series to be set within the DCEU, and it sees James Gunn pulling off with ease what seemed like a difficult task. Because we knew of the spin-off from well before the Suicide Squad was released last year, and we knew that Peacemaker was going to be on the main team of heroes, or really heroes and anti-heroes, but obviously, we weren't aware till we saw the movie that he was actually going to turn out to be the one to betray the group and actually kill one of his own team members and attempt to kill others as part of this giant cover-up. So, by the end of that movie, while John Cena is a charismatic actor and he was very funny in the film, Peacemaker turned out to be the most unlikable character on the team, and naturally that left us wondering, of all these weird, quirky characters, most of whom were considerably much more likable, why go with Peacemaker to be the first one to lead his own show? Because why would we want to follow someone we know we aren't going to like for an entire season? Well, Gunn finds a way to convince us. I'm not saying Peacemaker gets immediately or even fully redeemed for his actions in the Suicide Squad, but this paints a much better picture of who he truly is, which is one of the many advantages TV has over film. And I say this as someone who watches a lot more movies than TV shows. One thing we know from the film that gets further expanded upon here is that Peacemaker has a warped sense of what he views as justice and order. Like, there's the line that gets repeated in the show where he says he cherishes peace with all of his heart and he doesn't care how many men, women, and children he has to kill to get it. He's obviously a walking contradiction, but in his head, he's someone who thinks he's doing something noble. And this explores what happens when that gets challenged. While the DCEU has been known, for better or worse, for not having the close interconnectivity between its projects, I'd say you really need to watch The Suicide Squad before seeing this. There is a recap of what you truly need to know from the beginning so that you're not lost as to why Peacemaker's in the hospital at the start of the show or anything, but it's better to just watch the movie in its entirety before seeing this. Partially because you have a better understanding why the returning characters from that movie are in the position they're in here. Plus, there are several conversations from that film that do get revisited in the show, particularly when Rick Flag says to Peacemaker before dying, "Peacemaker, what a joke." And that line bothers Peacemaker over the course of the show and gets him to rethink his upbringing, his worldview, and everything he's valued until then. It takes a while for him to get to a position that's more noble and outwardly good, and he doesn't fully, truly change aspects of his personality, which has been described as more of a bro-y Captain America, but it does change him, and in a way that feels like a natural progression. And joining him are returning players Jennifer Holland and Steve Agee as Amelia Harcourt and John Economos, both of whom worked with Amanda Waller in the Suicide Squad and are demoted to this field mission for going against their orders in the finale of the film. And I thought it was nice they were brought back for this, especially since I found the banter among Waller's workers throughout that film to be an underappreciated aspect of the Suicide Squad. Like, I thought the whole movie was fantastic, but there are some great throwaway moments and line deliveries in those sequences, and I found those characters to be quite enjoyable. And I was happy to see how Gunn managed to take these funny, minor characters and expand upon them in such a fun way that, at times, they were just as compelling as the main character. We see Harcourt is just as skilled on the field as Peacemaker, taking part in her fair share of the action scenes, which was Holland's own background in competitive gymnastics being written into the character. Plus, she acts as something of a love interest for Peacemaker, where she rebuffs him, but seems kind of intrigued by him as the series goes on, but she still keeps her distance, and while nothing for now has happened between them, it does bring a lot of nuance to her character and their relationship. And then Economos primarily serves as a source of quirky humor, with a lot of throwaway moments similar to his role in the Suicide Squad. And again, a real-life aspect of Steve G was written into the character, as he dyed his beard specifically for the film, and then when he had to do it again for the show, it became one of the bigger running jokes, where Peacemaker constantly calls him Dyebeard, which culminated with him revealing more of his backstory as far as why he does that, and in a way that I found to be surprisingly quite poignant. And along with them, we get a whole new cast of characters, which also includes Danielle Brooks as Amanda Waller's daughter Leota, with Viola Davis even cameoing as Waller in a couple of episodes to talk to her, as well as Freddie Stroma as Peacemaker's friend Vigilante, who later joins the group, and Chukwudi Uwe as Clemson Mern, who works directly for Waller and leads the team, who call themselves Project Butterfly. And the chemistry among all these characters was fantastic, and would just put a big old smile on my face every time they just spoke to one another. And it plays into an overarching theme that we've seen in a lot of Gunn's other projects, and that's finding your niche as an outsider and the camaraderie you can form with those who are also outsiders. This is something we often see in Gunn's films, like The Suicide Squad, Guardians of the Galaxy, or even his underrated indie superhero film Super, because he always mixes these compelling arcs about these weird, quirky characters who try to find their place in the world, though through the lens of these bizarre setups as well as vulgar humor. And believe me when I say, this gets vulgar. I gotta say, while Marvel is better known for having a lot of tonal consistency to their films that you can almost always rely on, that can also be for better or worse sometimes, depending on how you look at it, because in some instances, it has to rein in certain filmmakers to make sure that what they're doing tonally fits within this universe that 20 plus other movies and shows have. DC, for all their faults, does at least seem to give a little more freedom as far as what can and can't be done. Now, Gunn has gone on record to say both studios give creators the creative freedom to do as they wish, but it definitely feels more apparent in DC if you ask me, as they already have a few R-rated projects under their belt and Marvel doesn't. Similar to the Suicide Squad, this is pure, unfiltered James Gunn, where it's filthy, crude, vulgar, but utterly weird and clever at the same time. Yet it also takes place in the same universe as some of the darker, grittier films like the Zack Snyder material. And because this allows Gunn to do what he wants from a writing standpoint, there's a distinct feel to each and every episode. Despite taking place in the same universe as Man of Steel, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, and all these other films, this feels first and foremost like a James Gunn project, and then a DCU project second, which I really appreciated. Though I also really liked Gunn's love for the lore of DC Comics on display, and a lot of the throwaway lines referencing obscure characters like Batmite, as well as some of the running jokes that centered around characters' views on the Justice League, including an Aquaman joke that paid off beautifully in the final episode where the Justice League actually show up, and we actually get to see Jason Momoa and Ezra Miller briefly get James Gunnified and interact very briefly with Peacemaker. Honestly, one of my favorite moments in the entire show, and now I want to see a James Gunn directed Justice League project because that would be so much fun. And going back to the cast real quick, not only was everyone's chemistry great, I just thought all the performances were top-notch. I really would like to see more of Steve G and Jennifer Holland in other projects. I know they're known more for their close ties to Gunn, but I think they'd be a lot of fun to see branch out and do some other stuff, as they were both full of charisma here. I would definitely watch anything else that they'd be involved in. And Danielle Brooks is excellent as well. I've been a big fan of hers from Orange is the New Black, and here, she gets one of the more tragic arcs in the show. In addition to just being Waller's daughter, she also fills the role of the individual who gets too wrapped up in their work, and we see it take their toll on their personal life, with her spending all this time away from her wife. And it's an arc that, admittedly, we've seen I don't know how many times before, and it does take up a chunk of several episodes, but that's also not all there is to her character, as we also heavily explore the camaraderie she forms with Peacemaker, Hardcore, and everyone else. So we get a nice balance of her more comedic side in these interactions, as well as this more grounded arc of life behind the scenes for her. And I thought Brooks did an excellent job of seamlessly shifting back and forth between the comedic and tragic aspects. But John Cena himself is, of course, absolutely fantastic here. His skills as a comedic actor have really impressed me. I always got the sense ever since Blockers that he'd be really great if he stuck with comedy, and these last couple of years have just solidified that for me. He has such a great sense of timing. I know he improvised a number of fun moments, such as when he's giving Economos this long list of people who they should have framed in one episode, and he's another one who brings a nice balance between the humor and pathos. While I wouldn't be opposed to seeing him in dramatic roles in the future, I really hope Cena primarily sticks to comedies, as he's honestly a natural. And speaking of his more tragic side, one of the biggest arcs explored is the relationship between Peacemaker and his father Augie, played by Robert Patrick, who is not only the man that trained him to be who he is, but he's also just a horrible, horrible person. Now, Robert Patrick does a great job here, but this is probably one of the most vile people we've seen in the DCEU, or really any superhero movie or show. There's no mistaking this guy as having some sort of super layered personality or anything. He's just an evil, racist dude who has nothing but contempt for everyone around him, his own son included. It played well into Peacemaker's arc, as we see a lot of the internal struggles he goes through and all the behavior from his dad that he has to unlearn, but he was pretty brutal to watch at times. Now, regarding the show's pacing and its structure, I thought it was excellent. I never had an episode where I thought this was boring or this wasn't needed. Every episode was jam-packed with pure entertainment, from its flamboyant opening sequence, which is still my favorite opening title sequence to this day, to the end of each episode where we get a post-credit scene every time. And the way each episode built nicely on top of one another, with over-the-top action scenes, more irreverent humor that was crude but not just vulgar for the sake of it, and the way it builds towards an absolutely wild finale with the butterflies, each episode was just such a blast, down to a lot of the one-off side characters that a protagonist would run into for a couple of minutes. I really didn't have that much of an issue where I thought any one episode was notably weaker than the others. Now, if I had any nitpicks, this wasn't a deal breaker or anything, but maybe the one thing with the butterflies is that due to the nature of these creatures, it does cause other characters' storylines to get abruptly cut off throughout the show, since they take over the bodies of humans and effectively kill them when they take over, even though they retain their memories. Like, the reveal that Myrn was always a butterfly does provide a nice emotional storyline for his character when we find that out, and it's good that when we see them take over, it's not just with one-off side characters, so that not only are the stakes increased, but it adds an extra layer of heartbreak to these moments. It's just as a result, you do have this one storyline with these two detectives, played by Annie Chang and Lachlan Monroe, who are investigating Peacemaker, with the former getting really emotionally invested in the case. And you have Myrn's associate, Locke, who's this really cool character that masquerades as their boss, and also has a lot of intrigue about him, but then all those storylines just get abruptly cut short because they become butterflies. And even though the show's still a lot of fun with them as the butterflies, it is kind of disappointing to just see these characters' time all get abruptly cut short like that without any true sort of payoff for them. Especially with Locke, who comes in, has a major save, and you think he's going to have a much different role for the rest of the series than he winds up having. But again, it's more of a nitpick, and it's by no means a deal breaker or anything. Peacemaker is an absolute blast, and easily one of the best DCEU projects, making for an excellent continuation of the excellent The Suicide Squad. It does a great job of taking a character who I would have thought would have been difficult to follow, and makes him a compelling, layered anti-hero. The entire cast crushes it, though this truly proves how much of a comedic talent John Cena truly is, while getting out all the weird, quirky sensibilities of James Gunn. It's vulgar, crude, action-packed, and utterly surreal at times, and even if you aren't into superhero stuff all that much, I really recommend checking this out. Peacemaker Season 1 gets a 9.5 out of 10. So let me know, did you see Peacemaker, or are you planning to see it, and what are your thoughts? Is this one of your new favorite DCEU projects? Is it one of your new favorite James Gunn projects? Let me know in the comments below so we can discuss. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, and share it, and for more movie reviews and film discussion, please make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated. Thanks for watching, everyone, and keep having fun with film and TV.